You are listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with Steve Worsley, the toxic mold expert and your number one source for mold consulting and mitigation in the USA. Let's dive into a brand new episode. Before we get started on this episode, here's a not so short disclaimer. While all attempts have been made to verify the content provided in this podcast, neither the podcaster or the producers assume any responsibility for errors, omissions, or alternative interpretations of the issues discussed here. All information stated in this podcast is the opinion of Steve Worsley. Steve Worsley is a mold specialist with over 25 years of experience in the construction and mold industry. The Toxic Mold Podcast is for information sharing purposes only. The views expressed are those of the podcaster and his alone. These views should not be taken as expert instruction or commands. While there may be references to medical conditions and symptoms, all podcast episodes are the opinion of Steve Worsley, and any medical questions or concerns shall be addressed with the appropriate licensed medical professional or professionals. As the podcaster refers to different mold types, please be aware that Steve Worsley is not a microbiologist, and questions concerning mold specifics should be answered by the appropriate professional. Steve isn't, nor does he offer any legal advice. For any legal advice, you must speak with a lawyer. The listener is 100% responsible for his or her own actions. You can check out Steve's books on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for author Steve Worsley. You can also take Steve's courses on Udemy or Skillshare, and you can find out more about those at cnccontractorservices.com. Now, let's get to the episode.
Hello, you're listening to the Toxic Mold Podcast with myself, Steve Worsley, and we have my wife, Cassandra. Another day in paradise, right?
That's right. What is it that when we went to Key West? You bought a sign that says, living the dream.
Yeah, living the dream. Yeah, I used to say that a lot too, so that's funny. Today's subject is kind of piggybacks off of what we talked about last week with IEPs, but most of my clients, when we do a discovery call, they're like, well, what do you do when you do a mold inspection? So today's subject is, what does a mold inspection entail?
Which is a very good topic, because I don't think when people schedule mold inspections, they actually know.
Right. And I understand if you're a listener, this isn't your profession. I don't expect you to know what I know about mold. But on the other hand, it helps to know what you should be looking for when you're hiring the IEP.
Absolutely.
And for new listeners, IEP is Indoor Environmental Professional.
IEP.
It's like I won't get deep into the weeds like we talked about last week. It's an umbrella term, mold inspector, consultants, industrial hygienists. It's pretty broad.
Yeah.
When you hear me mention mold inspections, I already know what your answer is going to be. But what do you think that entails? Like how long? What do you think it entails?
Well, I don't know how long for everybody else, but you were extremely thorough with your mold inspections. I know if you're going on one of them, it's an all-day affair.
Yes. And, for the most part, I don't expect every inspector to take all day, so I'm not saying that. But if they're in and out of there in an hour or two, that's a red flag. It takes me 1 to 2 hours just to introduce myself, get my equipment out, and do the roof and exterior. It usually takes an hour or two.
Well, and that brings up a really good point. I think people, before you hire somebody to come do a mold inspection, one of the best things you can do is ask them, how do they define or describe inspection?
Yeah.
Because sometimes a mold company will say to you, hey, we do free inspections. And what they're really doing is an intake questionnaire. Yeah. They're not actually inspecting anything other than looking with their eyes and walking around. They may not even bring much equipment with them. They actually are offering you a free discovery call on site. Mm-hmm. To then try to sell you on things. And so you should ask people who you're interested in doing a mold inspection, what comes with, what isn't, you know what I mean? Because inspection is a tricky word.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because we see it all the time with restoration companies. We do free inspections. No, you're there to find mold so you can do the remediation because nothing's ever free.
Correct. It's an intake. It's
exactly.
Not an actual inspection, which is why you need to ask them, what does their free inspection entail?
Yeah. And remember, I used to offer services where I did testing only. Mm-hmm. And even those took a couple of hours.
Yes.
Because then it turned into consultation. And for our listeners, I don't do that anymore.
No.
Because I believe testing by itself is not sufficient.
Correct.
And any of my clients will say this, but if you just send me your test results, which is a package we offer, it's really difficult for me to assess the overall condition of a home because it's only telling me what the test results were.
Yeah, and a snapshot in one instance.
Exactly. That brings up a good subject. For our listeners, when we do an air test, it is only a snapshot and an inspection of the property conditions at the time of the inspection.
Correct.
I could leave and a major windstorm comes through and blows shingles off the roof. Well, that's not my fault.
Correct.
I could leave and the basement could flood. It's just, and I know it sounds hypocritical to say it that way, but it is just a snapshot.
And for those who are more like business accounting minded, it's a balance sheet, not an income statement, right? A balance sheet, when I was in my MBA, they said a balance sheet is a snapshot in time. It's where the company is, assets, liabilities at that one moment. An income statement is the whole year.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's a balance sheet. That's it. That means the next moment, everything could change.
Yeah. That's why, part of why my inspections take as long as they take is I'm asking the client a lot of questions. Like, is there someone in the home that's sick? Has anybody done mycotoxin testing? Like, there's a lot to it, is my point.
So then what should, if somebody's using mold inspection in the proper context, what should an actual mold inspection entail?
Like I said, I always start with the exterior, but it should be the major components of the home. So the roof, the exterior, part of the exterior is siding, windows, doors, grading and drainage, gutters, a ton of things. You should make sure they go up in the attic. Now, I do want to be clear. There are times that I cannot access all areas of the attic. If I don't feel safe, I'm not going to do it. But on the other hand, I feel like a lot of inspectors, and this is in our standards actually, if there's blown in insulation and you cannot see the rafters, so the roof trusses, because that's what we walk on. Mm-hmm. We can't just walk on the sheetrock. We'd fall through.
No.
And it says in our standards that we're supposed to only inspect from the access. Well, if you have a home that's, I don't want to say chopped up, but not every home you can just open the hatch and see the entire attic. Most homes are not like that.
Exactly. You're assessing the exterior. Are you getting on the roof?
If you can, yeah.
Okay. You're getting on the roof.
If I can't, I use binoculars.
Okay. And so you're really looking for signs of moisture intrusion?
Defects that would lead to moisture intrusion.
Okay.
So once you're inside the home, yes, we're looking for moisture intrusion. On the outside, that is the intake, if that makes sense.
Okay.
That's the piece of paper you fill out when you go to a new doctor or a new dentist.
Exactly. Is there anything happening on the outside that could be leading to problems on the inside?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And that's why I do the exterior first.
Okay.
Like if I see, on the roof, let's just say there's a section of missing shingles. I make a mental note and I'm like, okay, pay attention in the attic area right by that flue or wherever the shingles were missing.
Okay.
That's why I do the exterior first. In my opinion, I've just always done it that way. I would assume most inspectors do that. To finish, what your question is so we've done the exterior, attic, we just talked about crawl space, same concept with the crawl space. It's called a crawl space for a reason. Mm-hmm. If we don't feel safe and it's literally army crawl, I'm probably not going to get very far in there, period, because it's not safe. But on the other hand, if an inspector's using that as an excuse, then that's not good. We do the mechanical room, all the HVAC components, and then all the rooms in the house. So you're inspecting everything.
Which takes a while.
Takes a long time.
So then how long should the mold inspection take if done properly?
At least 4 hours.
Wow.
In my opinion.
Wow.
Now, when I was doing home inspections, you're there as a generalist. So it's like your GP. Once it gets beyond what they are trained to do, they're going to refer you to a specialist. Well, if you're doing a mold inspection, you are the specialist. So in my opinion, if you're only there for a couple hours, that is not sufficient.
So definitely 3 to 4 hours is average.
I honestly don't think I could even do a 2 to 3 bedroom home in 3 to 4 hours.
So you say average 3 to 4 hours, but I wonder that's 3 to 4 hours of the inspector or the IEP having his or her undivided attention on the inspection, correct?
Exactly.
The reason why I ask that is because lots of people tend to want to use the IEP's time during a mold inspection to actually have a consulting session with them. So could you talk a little bit about the differences and how to navigate that?
That's probably one of the biggest issues I run into when I'm doing remediation or an inspection. My client, and I'm very polite and professional about it, but I tell them when I first get there, I introduce myself, gather some information. I've probably already gathered a lot of the information, but I say right to their face, like, the more you bug me, the longer it's going to take me. And after I've been here all day and it's 6:00 at night, I'm ready to go home. So it's compromising your inspection. So, and like I said, I get it. Most of my inspections I'm traveling for. So, as you know, because you go with, we get an Airbnb or a hotel for 3 nights. The night before, the night of, and then usually one extra day just in case. But my point is like, I'm dedicating all day for this client. So I'm clear with them. If you'll let me do my thing, this will be a better inspection for you. I'll be able to gather more information. Then when I'm done, we'll go over everything. We'll decide what testing you want done, and then we'll wrap it up. But if they keep coming and pulling me away from what I'm doing, it compromises the inspection.
Absolutely. And so there is a difference between a mold consult and
a mold
that was
inspection. Your question, huh?
And so the reason why I'm asking is because there is an appropriate time and place to do a mold consultation, and there is an appropriate time and place to do a mold inspection, and they are not the same.
Yeah. And, for out-of-town clients, sometimes it'll be a 2-day thing. Like, one day's the inspection, the second day is the consultation. Mm-hmm. The consultation's not an all-day thing, obviously. Correct. But if that's what they're expecting, then that's what they're going to have to pay me for.
Absolutely. Because it's not a 2-for-1, I guess is my point.
Yeah. And normally that's what it ends up being.
Yeah.
But, for our listeners, I just want you to understand, like, leave your inspector alone, let them do their thing, and they'll do a better inspection.
Absolutely. Now, here's something that I think a lot of people get confused about. So somebody will assume that they hire an IEP to do a full mold inspection. That IEP spends 3 to 4 hours plus doing the mold inspection. And then they hire that person or somebody else to take care of the mold in their home. But then they're shocked because change orders come in.
Yeah.
And they're like, why didn't the IEP catch all the mold behind the walls, under the floors during their inspection? What do you say to that?
Because we can't. We don't have x-ray vision.
Yeah, you're not cutting walls, right?
Exactly. A mold inspection is a non-invasive thing. Even if they're the homeowners, we usually aren't cutting flood cuts, which I wouldn't do anyways. Mm-hmm. You've got to do that under negative air. But to go back to your question, like, can't know what we can't know. I just had a recent project where there were 2 layers of subfloor. And it's almost as if the top layer, so the layer you could see, was installed to cover up all the mold. How do we know that? We don't.
Yeah, until you start doing the work.
Exactly. Like, if there's 2 layers of sheetrock on the walls, right off the bat, I'm like, I hate to do this to you, but that's change orders, because you just doubled. If I get a container out there, you just doubled the weight at the dump. I wouldn't say it takes twice as long, but there's a lot of factors we have to consider. And to answer your question is there's just no way we can know how high the flood cut needs to be or how long. Like, we just can't know that.
No, because you can't cut into walls or floors. And so a mold inspection is a starting point, but it will not catch everything.
No, I would hope our listeners understand that.
Absolutely.
It's just something we can't do. Once again, it's easy to armchair quarterback and be like, well, why didn't you pull a cover plate off an electrical outlet to see how many layers of sheetrock were there? If you want a for sure, like, this is what it's going to cost for remediation, I'm going to way overbid it. Mm-hmm. And I'm clear with my clients about it. And I'm clear of my scope of work, too, what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And mold is the gift that keeps giving. So
yes.
More than likely, when you have mold remediation done, you should expect change orders.
Yeah, the older the home is, you should expect more change orders.
Okay.
And, even if it's not that old of a home, let's just say it's only 20 years old, if there's been 6 owners, it's likely that a couple of them tried to cover some things up.
They
never admit it, but we see it all the time.
But it happens, yeah. So what does it cost if somebody's listening to this thinking, well, I guess the place we start is we need a mold inspection. What's the average cost for a mold inspection?
I would say between $400 to $1,000.
Okay.
Like, I know for me, up to homes that are 3,000 square feet, it's $700.
Mm-hmm.
My client who, maybe I was just doing an inspection for in Colorado, I was like, wait, it was way more than that. If I have to travel, obviously it's going to be way more.
Exactly.
But for our listeners, I would say between 400 and 1,000 should be average, but that's only for the inspection.
Correct.
If they have to travel, they're probably going to charge the IRS rate, which I think is 70 cents a mile this year. If they have to get lodging, they're going to have to charge you for that. Like, it'll keep going up if it's out of town. But keep in mind, that's only the inspection. The testing on top of that, depending on what kind of test you do, will just determine what the testing costs.
Absolutely. So it depends, but ballpark,
Yeah. And for our listeners, I would say I would budget probably $400 to $500 for testing.
Okay. So outside of the inspection cost.
Exactly.
Okay. So you're talking $400 to $1,000 for the inspection, and then you would budget another, $500 for testing?
Yeah. The only reason I say that high, just an EMA test, I think is $400 or $450.
Wow.
So if we do air testing, that's a lot less. But that's why I said $500.
Absolutely. So that you have at least a ballpark price range, so you know what between testing and inspections, what to be prepared for.
Yeah. In my opinion, if your inspector is going to charge you $3,000 or $4,000 and they're all day, I don't know. Is that pretty high? It's not up to me to say if it is. But if I was paying $4,000 and I was our listener, I would expect that inspector to be there all day.
Absolutely.
For $4,000.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, what's your call to action for people?
We kind of talked about it last week, but don't go with the cheapest inspector.
Absolutely.
You get what you pay for, period.
Yep.
If you can't go to a GP expecting them to be a urologist.
No.
Or an orthopedic.
Or gastro.
That's just not how that works.
Yeah.
So don't go with the cheapest person. We offer all sorts of services on our website, but consultations is obviously a popular one. So for our listeners, if you've had your inspection done, you're not sure what to do next, go to our website, book a consultation. You'll get a questionnaire that's pretty thorough. We schedule it. We do it usually Zoom. And I think the consultation's a 90-minute, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So you'll get a lot of information out of me, and I'll get a lot of information out of the client through the questionnaire.
Absolutely.
Go to our website, like I said, book it. It's simple. I appreciate all you listeners. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Make sure you go to our website at cnccontractorservices.com and sign up for the mold investigation checklist. Again, go to cnccontractorservices.com and get your free mold investigation checklist today. You can also on cnccontractorservices.com find out more about Steve's courses and books and consultations. Once again, go to cnccontractorservices.com.